All right, welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. We are back once again for MCJ Report 111. Let me know that you can hear the broadcast loud and clear. We are back in full effect. That's right, broadcasting right now simultaneously across 3 platforms. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and on Rumble. That's right. We did a little test run of Rumble a little bit earlier today, and it seemed to be working fine. So I thought, what the heck, let's give it a go. And we hope that Rumble will become a viable and sustainable option for us moving forward. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the broadcast. I hope that each and every one of you are doing really well on this Wednesday evening, no matter where you're from, whether you're from locked down Victoria or somewhere else in the country, or even from around the world. That's right, we have a nice international audience that frequents the MCJ Report. So the MCJ Report, I just want to add, is not just a show for Australians, but it is for all freedom-loving people around the world. That's right, we are independent media. We are not part of some big news conglomerate that tries to pull us left, pull us right, or to pull us in some sort of agenda-driven direction. We just say it as it is, and I think that Australians are starting to see that the mainstream media doesn't necessarily have their best interest at heart, and we're going to talk about that on the show tonight. We're also going to have a bit of a talk about the Brazilian president. That's right, President Bolsonaro. He has been staunch from the beginning, really just about from the beginning, in relation to the corona craziness. He has still yet to actually participate in taking the COVID vaccine, and he spoke at the UN assembly not all that long ago, and he was perhaps one of the only people not to have the jab, or not to allegedly not have the jab, or however which way you'd like to look at it. He seems to be remaining really staunch. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about that. It also appears that the people of New York City are protesting. That's right, New York City has implemented the medical regime of requiring proof of vaccination for entry into businesses, but it seems that not all New Yorkers are happy about it. So they're going and standing up for themselves, and there's a chant that has become particularly popular in these movements, and I'm sure that you'll see what I'm talking about. Also on the show tonight, we will have a grandmother from Melbourne. Now, she was assaulted last year by Victoria Police, and it was a very traumatic experience for her. So she has shown tremendous courage. She reached out. She wanted to jump on board the MCJ Report to tell her story. So, of course, MCJ Report is a voice for the people, and we are most definitely humbled to give her that platform. So you'll hear from her as well, perhaps maybe after the first half hour. and we'll also cover a few extra bits and pieces as well. So anyway, let me know that you can hear the broadcast loud and clear. I hope that everyone's doing well. If you're receiving the broadcast, give us a thumbs up, share the broadcast, and let's get this show on the road, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right, so let's get this started. No, we're not starting there. All right, we always start here with Telegram. That's right. If you don't have Telegram, go ahead and download it. In my opinion, Telegram is the most important tool of our time. I am far more active on Telegram than I am any other platform. What I love about it is that it's censorship free, and you don't have to worry about the iron fist of big tech coming down and destroying your platform, because it's a haven for free speech. So if you don't have it, go and get it. Go and get it from the App Store, and make sure that you give me a follow. And it's Morgan C. Jonas. So there you go. That is as simple as that. All right. All right, let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Who here knows what the fake news is? I think that you must know, unless you've been living under a rock. Of course, I'm referring to certain actors that work within the realm of mainstream media, and most definitely since the inception of this corona situation, we've seen no hesitation whatsoever from certain actors within the mainstream media to belittle and to undermine the attempts of people who ask questions in relation to corona. We've of course seen a horrific smear campaign of the heroic protesters of Melbourne, often referred to as violent and hostile, or quote, anti-vaxxers. And I'm still trying to work out exactly what this term anti-vaxxer is. You see, the problem that we're experiencing from the mainstream media is that you have these so-called journalists making these slanderous remarks about people who are protesting, yet without actually getting on the ground themselves and making any effort to speak to the people who are actually out on the ground holding banners, with very, very few exceptions, okay? And we see these horrible terms, and we've also seen terms such as far right or neo-Nazi. But of course, the main term is anti-vaxxer. Now, this term particularly gets under my skin for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's simply not true. I can tell you from 18 months meeting hundreds of people, probably thousands of people now in my experience out on the street since the inception of this corona situation, is that there are very few people out there who are legitimately against vaccines. The very vast majority of people out on the street protesting, they're simply saying that people should have the right to choose whether or not they want to take a vaccine, and that nobody should be punished should they choose not to take part in what the Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt referred to as the world's largest clinical trial. That is simply all they're saying. Nobody wants to control somebody else or tell somebody what they can and can't do. Yet this term anti-vaxxer has been manufactured by the mainstream media and used to smear people who are simply exercising their democratic rights. Now, this term anti-vaxxer, it has been engineered by the mainstream media to become synonymous with terms such as crazy person or selfish person or somebody that denies science, somebody that is a pest to society. And we see this term anti-vaxxer adopted by all sorts of people, celebrities, politicians, and unfortunately we see civilians turning on civilians and using that particular term. That selfish anti-vaxxer over there, keep him away from me. Those anti-vaxxers, they are the reason for the economic demise of our country. So if you want to get angry at somebody, get angry at them. It's a complete division campaign, and it's actually working. At a protest a little bit over a month ago, there was a huge crowd in Melbourne, thousands of people walking through the streets. And as they did so, there were residents in the high-rise buildings in Melbourne that opened their windows and threw unidentified liquids down onto the protesters. Somebody told me they were hit with what felt like boiling water. So it just goes to show that this tremendous division campaign, this scapegoating campaign, propagated by the mainstream media, egged on by the politicians, is manifesting on the streets in the form of violence, and it's absolutely disgraceful. Now, I'm going to take you through a couple of articles here. The first few are in relation to what happened with Monica. Of course, Monica courageously, as you know, declined to sign those anti-democratic bail conditions and ended up spending 22 days behind bars. And Even so, even in that moment, we saw such vitriol from the mainstream media, kicking somebody when they're down. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to take you through some examples right here, because I feel that it's important to identify, and as the saying goes, if you see something wrong, call it out. And when the mainstream media, with all of their institutional power, hiding behind the corporations, when they punch down at citizens, I feel that it's our right to say something, because it's simply unfair. At the end of the day, this is Australia, and I dare say that bullying other people is not part of our culture, and it's something that I think is a tradition to call out. So let's get started. Let me show you a couple of examples right here. All right, so we have somebody here by the name of Samantha Maiden. Okay, so this is taking you back to when Monica was initially intercepted and arrested, using the term anti-vaxxer. You and I, as I just mentioned before, anti-vaxxer, a slanderous term, synonymous with selfish person that doesn't care about the greater good of society, a science denier. That's the sort of context of the term anti-vaxxer. And here below, you see the term reality TV wannabe. So just a term that's really used to try and belittle, a term that's used to try and undermine, and quite frankly, just a completely childish term to refer to somebody as. So let's just move along here. Okay, so this is that particular person right there from the article. Samantha Maiden, so-called political editor, feels the use to use immature language. It really boggles the brain, doesn't it? All right, so here's another example of some slander right here. Look at this. Anti-vax leader. So again, they love using this term anti-vax, just painting people with the stroke of a brush. And by the way, there are certain people out there that are staunchly against vaccines. And what do I have to say about those people? I have to say, so what? So what? Who cares? If somebody wants to be against vaccines, let them be against vaccines. There's other people out there that are against Panadol. Let them be against Panadol. There's other people out there that are against sausage sizzles. Let them be against sausage sizzles. But of course, the term anti-vax has been used here incorrectly, because we're all about free choice and allowing people to make their own decisions. But anyway, I digress. Look at this. An article here written by a guy called Jack Painter and Caroline Schnell. Anti-vax leader Monica made $50K a day in custody. All right, so by using the term here made, they're almost implying that this is money that she made that she's put in her pocket, whereas it was very clearly public information that the funds were for legal defense. So by using this term, it could very well lead people to draw the conclusion that this is all just one big sham and that the money is just going in somebody's pocket. I mean, the term made, think about it, right? So how much did you make at work today? Well, I made $200. This is just just completely dishonest reporting here. And here we see this term again. Look at this. Reality TV wannabe turned anti-vaxxers. So it seems like there's a big pile on. We got it we got it spoken here by Samantha. And then we've got Jack Painter and Caroline Schnell jumping on the bandwagon, who have probably agreed that, hey, this is a funny thing to say. This is a great way to belittle someone. Reality TV wannabe. And here we go. There you go, Caroline Schnell using that term again. Former wannabe reality TV. It's just absolutely disgraceful, isn't it? Just the extent to which these people in the mainstream media will go and kick somebody when they're down. And Jack Painter, again another article. But look, this is actually quite pathetic. Have a look at this. Announces engagement after release from jail. How is getting engaged newsworthy, ladies and gentlemen? This just shows you the utterly disgraceful, sad state of affairs in Australian mainstream media. I'd hardly think that someone getting engaged is newsworthy, but I guess that just goes to show the sort of journalistic standards that we have in this country. All right, so let's have a look at these people. Who are they? Here we go, Jack Painter. I'm sure that he feels very proud about himself, using his platform with news.com.au to pick on members of the public and to do so in a very belittling manner. So supposedly he's a crime reporter. So, well, if you're a crime reporter, Jack, how about you start reporting on some of the crimes committed by Victoria Police and stop picking on your fellow citizens? Oh, I guess that might take a little bit of courage, so I might be asking a bit too much. And here's this person, Caroline Schnell, just another example here. So she covers courts, crime, and breaking news. Yet she likes to use immature language such as TV star, reality star, wannabe, that sort of thing. Again, a very sad reflection on the type of characters that we have working in the mainstream media here in Australia. And that's why it should really be no surprise to anyone that people are leaving the mainstream media in droves and turning to alternative independent media such as Rebel News, such as the MCJ Report. All right, so we have someone here, let's see, a journalist for the Herald Sun, Olivia Jenkins, using the term hostile. That's right, look at this. Officers placed a hostile marched under arrest. Okay, that doesn't make much sense to me. Let's go to another post. Police swarm and detain a, quote, hostile couple. Well, Olivia, how do you know that they were hostile? How much time did you spend on the ground speaking to those people before you decided that they are, quote, hostile? Did you spend any time speaking to them whatsoever? Or did you just decide that you happen to know everything? I'll tell you what looks hostile to me, seeing these people swarmed by several police officers, held on the ground, and essentially abused for doing what? Exercising what should only be their democratic rights. So, yeah, just again, you see somebody that has the backing of a corporation using this type of defamatory language against civilians. And that takes no courage. Let me tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, it takes absolutely no courage. What we see from the mainstream media, we see all these characters coming out and attacking people that are doing it hard, people that have lost their income during lockdowns, people whose lives have been absolutely destroyed by the government. And then on top of that, they have to deal with these defamatory remarks from the mainstream media. I mean, what this reminds me of is you got the schoolyard, right? You got 10 kids beating up one kid, and then another kid comes along and starts kicking the kid that's on the bottom. Takes absolutely no guts, and for somebody to stand up and be strong is something very special. And unfortunately, we don't see a great deal of that in the mainstream media, do we? All right, so moving along here to the conversation. Look at this. Anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists, and the far right, quote, came together over COVID. All right, so this is a crazy statement, and one that is utterly baseless and devoid of any evidence whatsoever, written by a guy called Josh Roos, who is a senior research fellow at Deakin University. Well, my question for you, Josh, is how much on-the-ground research have you done at these protests before coming up with these words such as anti-vaxxer or conspiracy theorist or far right? Have you spoken to anybody on the ground, or have you simply conducted in your research from academia and decided that you know better than anyone else without actually having a real conversation with a real person? So have a look at this guy. Look at this. It says here, far right I can't, it's hard to say this with a straight face, but he says far right nationalists, anti-vaxxers, whatever anti-vaxxers are, libertarians, all right, well, there's definitely libertarians out there, all right, there you go, you got one right, and conspiracy theorists, all right, have come together over COVID and capitalized on the anger and uncertainty simmering in some sections of the community. Well, Josh, have you ever stopped to think that maybe these people, it's not about coming together, but simply expressing their opposition to government policy, expressing their opposition to lockdowns that many could argue and do argue are non-evidence-based, measures that many argue are pseudoscience and cause far too much destruction and are disproportionate, okay? We see a mental health crisis in children. Many people out on the streets are protesting because they don't want the next generation to be left with damage that will last an entire generation or perhaps longer. Small businesses closed down for what? For what? These little corner stores shut down whilst huge hordes of people can make their way through Dan Murphy's. I mean, but according to this senior research fellow, they're far-right nationalists and they're conspiracy theorists. Well, I'll tell you what, Josh, I don't care how many letters you have after your name, unless you get there on the ground and have discussions with the people who are protesting, your opinion, regardless of all your degrees, I don't care if you have a PhD, your opinion is absolutely invalid. That's right, it's completely invalid. I don't care what piece of paper you've got hanging up on the wall. It's about time you got out of academia and had a look at the real world. That's what I say. So there you go. Look at this. He's got a PhD in political science, yet without without getting on the ground and truly seeking to understand. He's just throwing these terms, far-right nationalists. What an absolute disgrace. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Put your thoughts in the comments, but this just goes to show you the type of people that are using their platforms to just kind of, espouse their worldview. They don't really have to base their opinions off anything substantial. So, yeah, so that's basically it for this segment of the show. Now, I've got a bit of advice to these people in the mainstream media. Take it or leave it. I really don't care at this stage, but here we go. We've got 3 tips here. So tip number 1, kicking people when they're down for the sake of accumulating views is cowardly and dishonorable. Okay, in my opinion, that's just a fact. Maybe you agree with me at home, maybe you don't. 2, ridiculing civilians who don't have means of fighting back is also cowardly and dishonorable. It takes no courage to pick on people who have lost their livelihoods. It takes no courage to pick on people who most likely won't sue you for defamation. How about developing a bit of a backbone and going after some politicians? All right, 3, stop hiding behind the corporation you work for, show some guts, and instead of slandering civilians, try challenging the government on topics that matter, such as the true infection fatality rate of the Delta strain, okay? How about that? How about you press Brett Sutton or Martin Foley or whoever else is working in the Victorian executive in relation to that particular metric? You won't, because you're complicit and you work tightly with the government, and it's a special club and you're in it and the rest of society are not. So, I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen, using their platform to espouse this sort of language. I mean, you look at this guy right here, Jack Payne, using this derogatory terms, anti-vaxxer, reality TV wannabe. I mean, I'm kind of thinking to myself, if Monica and I are walking down the street and Jack's on the other side of the road, is he going to walk over to us and use the same type of language that he used in those articles, or will he keep walking? What do you think? Do you reckon he'll come up and say, hey, you're an anti-this and you're a wannabe this and that, or do you think that he'll just sort of walk the other way and hope that we don't... Oh, I can't even say this with a straight face. Of course we know what he would do. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this segment of the show. Let's keep this moving along, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right. So, who here knows who this guy is? What do you think of this guy? He's the president of Brazil, and I'd have to say that he's probably the most staunch person in public office in the world in relation to opposing the draconian COVID measures. That's right. Quite early on, President Bolsonaro, he came out against a lot of the measures that we've seen implemented around the world, measures that have drastically impinged on the civil liberties of good, decent people, millions of people from around the world. And you know what? He's also remaining staunch on no jab. That's right. He said that he didn't want to take the vaccine. He is not bending at the knee. In fact, he attended a United Nations meeting just the other week, and there was a supposed, like a gentleman's agreement type of arrangement that the attendees would be who already had the COVID jab. But Bolsonaro said, no, look, I'm not taking it. And instead, he took the floor in the United Nations and started talking about alternate COVID remedies, the type of talk that might get you kicked off of social media if you start talking about it too much. So I'm going to show you his speech, and I'm going to allow you at home to make up your own mind in relation to what you think about it.
World leaders gathered in New York on Tuesday for the United Nations General Assembly with a focus on fighting the pandemic. So it was perhaps curious that the first speaker was Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, a vaccine skeptic who appeared to openly break the UN's honor code simply by walking in the door. Under the code, UN officials asked that all who enter the hall be vaccinated, though they did not require proof. The far-right leader, who had COVID last year, has bragged about not getting the shot, saying his immune system is strong enough to fend off contracting it again. In his UN address, Bolsonaro appeared conciliatory by saying he does support the vaccine, but immediately pivoted to stress he remains against requiring it for Brazil's citizens, despite slipping poll numbers at home for his handling of the pandemic. He also doubled down on his support of the use of the controversial drug hydroxychloroquine, normally used to treat malaria, that emerged early on as a potential treatment for COVID, but has since been dismissed by many health officials as ineffective and potentially harmful.
Não entendemos porque muitos países We don't understand why so many countries, along with most of the media, position themselves against the early treatment. History and science will hold everyone accountable.
While Bolsonaro walked the halls of the UN unvaccinated, even hugging Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the rest of New York may not have been as welcoming. With no one allowed into the city's restaurants without proof of vaccination, Bolsonaro and his aides appeared to settle for slices of pizza on the sidewalk, as a photo posted to social media by two of his cabinet members showed. Next to speak at the UN after the Brazilian leader was his polar opposite when it comes to fighting COVID, U.S. President Joe Biden, but not before the podium was completely sanitized with a hefty wipe down.
So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Put your thoughts in the comments. Are you a fan and supporter of the president from Brazil, Bolsonaro? What do you think about him? I tend to quite like him. I like his policies. I think some of the policies from his administration should most definitely be adopted in Australia. We did quite an extensive piece into Bolsonaro maybe about a month ago on MCJ Report, and we'll definitely be revisiting him because, you know, I look at the state of political affairs in our country and I think we need to take inspiration from overseas because we just have a lack of people standing up. Of course, when I say that, we are fortunate that we at least have some great leaders in our parliaments, people to the likes of Craig Kelly, for instance, and George Christensen while he's still around. But I always seek to show politicians from other countries who I consider to be doing a good job. So put in the comments, do you like him? Do you not? It's up to you. You can make your own decision. And isn't that pretty interesting that we saw a photo right there of the president of Brazil forced to eat pizza out on the road because they're enforcing the mandatory vaccinations, COVID vaccinations, as a condition of entry in New York City. But guess what? Not all New Yorkers are happy with this increased tyranny, and we're seeing more and more protests in New York. I've got a clip here. It goes for about a minute. It just shows some protesters. You know, we haven't really seen a great deal of protests in relation to corona measures from the United States, but it seems like for the prospect of mandatory vaccinations, they're starting to ramp up in a few different cities. So I've got a bit of a clip from New York. I'm going to show it for you right now. So there you go, the people from New York making their voices heard. So if anyone from New York happens to be tuned in, good on you. Keep up the fight. Keep getting out there. It's your democratic right, your right to free speech. And nobody should have to be submitted to this type of coercion. And as the saying goes, coercion is not consent. It's completely inhumane to require anybody to undertake a medical procedure they don't want to take just so they can live their basic lives. So good on you from the people of New York. And by the way, who here has ever been to New York? I was fortunate enough to visit myself several years back. I had a great time. What a great big city. And we hope that at some point common sense will prevail. But maybe New York will be off limits for those who don't want the vaccine. But there may be other options, right? Such as Norway. We see Norway now opening the doors to more and more countries for travelers who are unvaccinated, and also to completely bypass hotel quarantine or whatever quarantine they had in place over there. So we hope to see a domino effect in relation to the reinstatement of freedoms that never should have been taken, right? Anyway, let's keep this moving along, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right, one of our very own, I'm just going to move out of the way here. That's right, from Melbourne, a grandmother speaks out against police misconduct, okay? So you may remember last year, I believe it was the 19th of September 2020 in Elstonwick. Police were quite heavy-handed with a grandmother. She was 69 years old at the time, and they engaged in what I would describe as misconduct. and they acted against her in a way that I would describe as assault. It was a very traumatic experience, and a bit over a year later, Robin reached out to me and she said, hey, I'd like to tell my story and to get a message out there to Australia and the world in relation to what she's experienced. And also she has a great message for Victoria Police as well, people who serve in the police force. So I'm going to play a couple of clips for you now. Now I'm going to replay the ordeal, what happened. It was captured by an independent YouTube media person that goes by the account name of Box4. Now, before I do, I just want to express that it is disturbing seeing this footage, very disturbing scenes that contain many police officers surrounding a grandmother. So viewer discretion is advised, just to let you know. I find it distressing. So I'm going to play it for you. Now, the clip plus the interview goes for about 20 minutes. So I'm going to play that for you, and I'll be back in 20 minutes.
Time trial. And this is what. No, don't take my phone.
I'll see some evidence. Alright?
I will put it away. No, I just keep my phone on me, please. Oh, no. Just, I'm just grabbing.
Take a step back, guys. Take a step back for me.
I was folding it up.
Give me my phone! Give me my phone! No! Give me my phone! Daddy, no! Give me my phone! Put your hands behind your back. No! Let me go! No! Leave me alone! Leave me alone! What are you going to? Let me go! Let me go! My dog! My dog! My dog! No!
Is that your dog? Is this your dog?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong. I think nothing wrong. What's that? Oh, why are you doing this to me? Why? Why? I'm 60. I'm 69 years old. 69. I've got 4 kids and 6 grandchildren. I've done nothing wrong ever. No, my dog. My dog.
Your dog's right here.
Oh my God. Please help me. No. I'm a grandmother. I'm a mother. I've never had one.
Behind them. We've got a police line up now. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. No worries.
All right, we are joined here by Robin. Robin, thank you so much for joining us on the MCJ Report. It is a true privilege to have you on board the show. It's been over 12 months since that horrible event in Alstonwick where you were, as far as I'm concerned, assaulted by several members of Victoria Police and treated in an inhumane way. We just rewatched the footage on MCJ Report, and it's fresh in my mind. Now, I'm going to take you back to the start of what happened. As far as I'm concerned, I saw you in the footage filming a woman who was being arrested. But would you mind, in your own words, telling us what you were doing out that day?
Actually, I was planning to go to the rally in the city, and then I found out that they changed it because there was a lot of violence by the police there and people were getting arrested. So they changed it, and a friend rang me and let me know. So I was in St Kilda Road. So my car was parked there, and I was in the gardens, and I saw all the black cars go past, the response cars, and I knew that they already knew where it was going to be because they were going speeding down St Kilda Road. So I was aware that there was going to be, a police presence. So, but I continued to go there. And when I got there, it was such a beautiful day, and everyone was out with their dogs and with, riding their bikes and everything. And then, but the police were just blocking off everything. So when I parked and I went across to where the lady was, they obviously chased everyone else away. And there was only one lady there left from the rally. And so my heart went out to her because I'm a Christian, and I felt like the Holy Spirit said to me, she was like surrounded by the police, but she was very calm. And she was explaining all about the Constitution to them and everything. And they were really quite, intimidating, I felt. And I felt like the Holy Spirit said to me, if that was your daughter, would you just stand by with everyone else and just watch? And I felt like the Holy Spirit said to me to film her and what was happening. So I got my phone out and I started filming. And then they must have planned to arrest her. And obviously, I think afterwards they must have planned to arrest me, but I was unaware of that. So they took her behind the tree where she had her bag and her banner. And then she started to try and roll up the banner. And so then this policewoman started yelling at her, screaming at her about the banner. So I got my phone out again to film, and, that they were abusing her. And so I got it out to film, and then they just, this policeman just yelled at me and said, "Hey, you," and I just got such a fright. And then they just came around, about 6 or 7 of them, and they just attacked me. They just swarmed on me. And I had my dog. I actually had my dog, who was only about 12 months old, just a puppy really. And he was just running around having fun. I had no idea where he was. And then I had the lead, the bottle of water, and my phone, and they just knocked everything out of my hands. And I just was hysterical. I was the biggest shock, because I was 69 years old. I'm 70 now, so I can talk about it now because it's over a year, but it's still hard because it brings it back really it was just yesterday.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. And I think
really
back to that scene. I think back to the moment when you were apprehended. Now, Victoria Police, when they're making arrests, they're supposed to use force that they consider proportionate to get the job done. So why do you think you were swarmed by so many police officers? Surely it did not require that amount of police personnel to arrest you, 69 years old, walking your dog. Why do you reckon they did that?
I've got no idea. I still can't understand it. I just don't have a clue why they feel that they have to. I mean, we've seen it just escalate to something, even worse things happening to people now. And it just keeps piling on. I've got no idea. I didn't feel the pain. I'm just thankful to God that they didn't slam me into the ground like they slam everyone else. I'm just I'm thanking God that they didn't do that. They sort of marched me across to the fence and just twisted my hands and arms behind my back. Really, really terrible. It was just shocking. And then, but I was hysterical about my phone. And then I was hysterical about the dog because he's just a puppy, and I'd never been to that park before. I was not familiar with the area. I didn't know anybody there, not a soul. And I saw the van in the distance, and they frog marched. They literally frog marched me across behind the other lady to where they just started setting up the table to process the fine. And of course, they didn't know at that stage that I was actually out of my 5K zone. So you know what I mean? I was only filming, and there was so many onlookers and bystanders. So
Right. What reason did they give you for arresting you that day?
they told me that, when we went across, they told me I had to show my license, and then they said, she's out of her 5K zone, and so that's what gave them the excuse to fine me. But they didn't have a reason. Like, the only reason that they would have had to arrest me in that violent manner was because I was filming. That's the only thing.
Right. So did they? Let me ask you a question. Did they put you in handcuffs before or after asking for your identification?
No, before, way before. They immediately.
It doesn't.
They immediately slammed me across. They just grabbed me, a whole lot of them, 6 of them, slammed me across into the fence, and then forcibly put handcuffs on me. And that's why I was hysterical.
I'd like to find out if that's proper protocol, because I mean, I'm not an expert in police protocol, but I'm under the impression that if Victoria Police are going to arrest somebody, they must explain the reason for the arrest.
No.
So they didn't do that.
Actually, I think he might have said, because he called out, "Hey, you," and I turned away. He probably thought that was sufficient to arrest me on resisting arrest. Maybe that was in their plan.
Well, hey, you is not equivalent to "you are under arrest." And now you actually made a complaint. You actually made a complaint to the Victoria Police Conduct Unit regarding their behaviour that day. What happened with that?
Well, I did have an independent inquiry, like, it was the police investigating themselves, which I wasn't very hopeful about. But I did a 3.5 hour, in February, I did a 3.5 hour, statement to the investigating officer. And of course, they decided in the end that the violence the excessive force they used against me was quite appropriate.
Right, so how did they justify that? You've got multiple men surrounding you, yelling, intimidating. How are they able to justify that being proportionate?
Oh, it's just a corrupt system. It's just, of course, I don't think it's going anywhere, any of these. I'm sorry that I actually even did go down that path. I was still naive enough to think that maybe there was some justice, but now I know there's none. And there's the depth of corruption is really nearly impossible for you or I or anyone citizen to understand. We just can't comprehend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to start looking at some private prosecutions. Now, let me ask you, Robin, it's been a little bit over a year since this incident. Would you mind talking a little bit about how this experience with Victoria Police has affected you moving forward past that date in September 2020?
Well, even now, I really can't watch it. Like, people say, "Oh, you the lady that blah blah blah," and then they might get it out and show me, and I'd say, "No, I can't look at it. I actually can't look at the footage, and I could not drive past police cars. I couldn't drive past the local police station. Everything I was seeing, like the yellow and blue on the side of cars, like that they were all, I was just looking at cars like they were all police cars. If I hear like a siren or something, like I go into trauma, like because I trusted the police up until now, and that was like the biggest shock in my whole life. I've been going to counselling. I had to go to, I actually was injured with my wrists, and the chiropractor said that would have been a permanent injury if he hadn't adjusted it. And also, like, I mean, I know for anyone their wrists is very important, but for me, like, I'm a classical pianist and I'm also a harpist. So, like, for everything that I do, like, I have to have the strong the strong wrists, and I was they actually injured my wrists, putting them in the handcuffs. And then when they were waiting to get, the fine, I said, oh, I had surrounded by the police. Like I said, look, I'm not going to run anywhere. Can you just please, they're hurting me. Can you take them off? And you know what he did? He actually tortured me more by pulling down on them to dig into my wrists to say, oh, they're loose. And he did that.
That's absolutely disgraceful.
So that was torture as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgraceful, but unfortunately it's not surprising. I think the scenes that we've seen since the inception of this corona situation has caused many of us here in Victoria to lose faith in the police, and it's very, very sad to see that trust in the police has been lost for so many. Do you think it's possible for the relationship to be repaired between the police and the public?
I think it will take a generation. And actually, I know there are some good police. And at the beginning, I wasn't prepared to realise that. But the one that did the investigation was very kind. And so, it restored a bit. And then, of course, I've gone into a couple of times. I've gone into the police stations with the cops for COVID, information, and that took a lot of courage, but I did that, and they were listened to me, and they were in the local police stations, and they were quite kind. So, I know there are, I'm worried that they will leave and the other ones will stay, and we won't have anyone kind left in the police force.
Yeah, that is a possibility. We saw a senior constable from New South Wales, Alexander Cooney, a great guy that actually left the police force and is now speaking up in favour of people's rights and calling on police to do the right thing. Do you have a message for Victoria Police that you'd like to express? Because several officers actually do watch the show.
To all the police out there, I know your conscience. If you've been told things that just don't sit right with you, and you're given orders that you don't want to carry out, I feel that if you could just have integrity and make a decision to be courageous and brave and speak out against this corruption in the police force and the violence and the assaults that are happening all the time on innocent citizens. And actually, I think if you keep going along this way, you're actually causing it happen to yourself and your own families and your own children. And to stand up now, you will get respect and you will get help from everyone. But if you continue to go along with just, I'm getting paid, I'm just following orders, I really feel like in the end, it won't work out good for you. I really ask you to stand up now and stand with the people, and please stand with us. That's what I'd like to say.
That was really, really well put. Thank you. Great words, Robin. Now, before we wrap our broadcast up, is there a message that you would like to share with Australia and also our international audience?
I just really want people to know what's happening in Australia and especially in Sydney, Western Sydney, and in Melbourne. It feels like to me there's a war being waged upon us without realising that it was brewing for a long time, I think. There's a war of the government and the police commissioner and the police, and also militia, I think, being used against the innocent people, innocent citizens. And I just I just ask everyone to support us and help us to, stand up against this tyranny and not have fear. And the media are working in with the police as well and the government, just portraying everyone in a bad light. Just please, don't believe all the things that you see about the citizens in Melbourne and Sydney, because we're fighting for our freedoms. We've had them all stripped from us
in a relatively short time, maybe 18 months, and we don't have any freedoms left. So if we don't stand up now together and not allow division to happen, which is what they want us to be divided in all different ways, if we stand together and love each other and reach out to each other and be there to help each other, no matter who it is, that we're not going to judge, we just want to help people. And if everyone helps each other and loves each other and reaches out to each other with empathy and understanding, it doesn't matter where they are with what they understand, what's happening. I think, you know, just to accept people for who they are as human beings made in the image of God, and we have inalienable rights from God. And so we have to fight for that. And that's what I just ask for support from people to understand what we're going through.
Robin, thank you so much. You are most courageous for speaking out. I know that on behalf of our MCJ audience, we are so grateful for your time. You're an inspiration to us. I hope that there are police officers out there that listen to your words very, very carefully. And I'm glad to see that you're going along strong. You're not giving up on freedom, and you're not bending at the knee to this tyranny either. And we salute you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show, Morgan. Yeah, thank you for everything, all your support.
Thanks, Robin. Speak to you soon.
Bye.
All right. So once again, a huge thank you to Robin. Robin, thank you for having the courage to tell your story. Some very thought-provoking words. We all appreciate it greatly. You're an inspiration, and hopefully for the Victoria police officers who are watching the broadcast tonight, hopefully something that Robin said has sunken in. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep this rolling along here, but we're going to stay on topic just a little bit. I'm going to ask a question. Let me just get myself out of the way here. Why are so many Victoria police officers required per arrest? Have any of you asked this question? We see scenes from Melbourne time and time again. 4, 5, 6, 7 police officers required to arrest one person. And it's not always that they happen to be arresting a big, strong, violent man. As you saw in the case of Robin, they sent several officers to surround her. Very intimidating. Now, why is it? Why does it take so many officers to arrest one person? I've got a little clip here of a few arrests just to illustrate the point I'm making, and then I'm going to reveal to you my theory. Okay, I guess we can call it a theory as to why I think that it requires so many officers. So I've got a little video. I'm going to play that.
It's painful, it's rough, it's not pressure on my back. I'm not resisting arrest. And you guys are providing me.
I've got identification on me, you never asked me for identification. You're under arrest. Fucking assholes.
This is my statement here, guys. Has I been not resisting? Have I been?
Come on, mate.
All right, so in other countries around the world, there's you see scenes of 2 police officers being required to make an arrest of one person. So why is it in Melbourne, Australia, so many police officers are required? Well, my inclination is that due to the lowering of physical requirements to join Victoria Police, there is simply a lack of physically capable people, especially rookies and those who have just joined the police force. So therefore, with a lack of people who are, say, quite physically strong and up to the task, it's just a simple matter of common sense that more people will be required to make these arrests. Now, I'm not just speaking willy-nilly. A couple of years ago, the physical requirements were drastically reduced in order to qualify for Victoria Police. One of the requirements, believe it or not, is demonstrating the capability to perform 5 push-ups. So, I'm not even joking, 5 push-ups and you too could be putting on the uniform. Anyway, I've got a clip here from 2019. It just goes for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, showing a little bit about the physical training requirements that are part of this schedule for joining VicPol. Check this out.
Police are making it easier for recruits to pass its fitness test as it looks for ways for more women to join the ranks. Force Command says it's not watering down its requirements, just providing a helping hand.
Despite years of trying, Victoria Police has struggled to get its female recruitment much above 30% of the workforce.
We're not getting the numbers of female recruits applying that we want to get to the 50%.
The fitness requirements of the entry test are thought to be one obstacle. The required tasks include a 1-minute plank, an agility run, climbing a barrier 1.3 metres high, swimming 100 metres in 4 minutes, and 5 push-ups. So the Force says it will help those applicants who don't make the cut. Already there are instructional videos on the police website.
Squeeze your buttocks and core muscles throughout the movement.
And unsuccessful applicants will be offered targeted programs to improve skills where they're lacking.
So it's more of an assisted program to make sure they meet the current standards rather than lowering any standards.
Personal trainer Bree Reishman has prepared applicants for the Force and says the existing standards are already easy to meet.
They're pretty basic and they're quite standard, which is achievable from anyone, female, male, that are wanting to get into the police force.
So are push-ups really the problem? The Police Association says there are plenty of areas other than physical fitness where Victoria Police could give ground if it wants to attract more female recruits.
Things that provide for better work-life balance are essential to providing a more diverse workplace.
Dean Felton, 7 News.
7news.com.au.
Yeah, so as you can see there, ladies and gentlemen, you don't exactly need to be a super athlete to make the cut for getting into Victoria Police. And as we know at the protests, very often we see a lot of junior rank officers sent out. Of course, we think back to a protest a couple of weeks ago in Richmond. There were supposedly at least 50 officers, this is what was reported in the media, that were just out of the academy, and a whole bunch of constables, probably their first year in the police force. And given these laughable physical requirements, to me, it's a matter of common sense. It's kind of like a bad joke, like how many clowns does it take to change a tire or something to that effect. And so what happens if Victoria Police continues their woke agendas and continues to reduce the physical requirements even lower? It may take 12, 20 officers to arrest one person. Who knows where we're going to end up. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you because I just sort of was thinking about it. I thought, why does it require so many people? And to me, it just seems like a common sense answer, and that is that, well, they're just not really up to the task of making arrests. Sometimes arrests, I'm sure, are very physically demanded, very difficult to make. And so bit of satire in there, obviously. I'm throwing a few jabs in there, just a bit of an MCJ attempt at humour, which doesn't exactly happen every day. So, well, at least I thought it was funny. Tell me, was that funny or was it not funny? Anyway, hopefully it was. Hopefully it was. Let's keep this moving along, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Alrighty, where are we? Okay, so other bits and pieces, that's right. We're going to talk about some other bits and pieces to wrap the show up. These are just a few topics I wanted to bring to your attention that didn't really fall into any of tonight's categories on the show, so thus other bits and pieces. Alright, so this came out today. As you see, charges laid over hotel quarantine. It says, WorkSafe has charged the Victorian Department of Health with 58 breaches of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. What I want to see, ladies and gentlemen, is I want to see individuals from the government charged with offences. People to the likes of, Daniel Andrews or Martin Foley. So seeing the Department of Health getting charged, I want to see individuals getting charged. That's just my perspective. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? I'll send this to you so you can have a read through it and make up your own mind in relation to what you think it is and how much merit it has. mcjreport.com/join. Go and put your newsletter in. We're just going to fly through these. All right, check this out. This is pretty interesting. Thousands of Australian workers are set to strike in a united protest against no jab, no job. All right, George Christensen posted this on his Telegram. So if this is the case, I support the workers 100%. I think it's a great idea. Look at this. It says in a press release written on behalf of NEU, Christian Machengiani stated, workers from multiple sectors across Australia are planning to strike at Reclaim the Line protest at 11 a.m. Friday, 1st of October, as the clock ticks towards government vaccine mandates. So, are you a worker? Would you be interested in participating in this strike? What do you think about strikes? Do you think strikes are effective? If enough people strike, undoubtedly it's a tool that can bring the government to the negotiating table, but it requires a very serious amount of participants. There's a Facebook page which seems to be vocal in this strike. If you want to go and join it, Australian Education United. It looks like a private group with 16,500 members that has really blown up over the past few days. All right, here's something else. Officer suspended after footage of Melbourne man thrown to the ground. What does that even mean? Do we really trust Victoria Police to hold proper, objective internal investigations on their own officers? At this stage, to me, it's kind of like, well, what type of a job are they really going to do? Now, he's been suspended. How come he hasn't been arrested and charged? Okay, this is the footage from Flinders Street Station of an officer grabbing a man and throwing him into the ground. I'm sure you've all seen it. It's very disturbing. So the officer has been suspended, and police are going to investigate this incident. But if it was a member of the public that committed such an act against another member of the public, I would presume the suspect would have already been arrested and charged. So it says the officer's been suspended. How come he has not been arrested and charged? Why is there a double standard? This is just an absolute disgrace. Suspended from work. It's just an absolute slap in the face to society, if you ask me. All right, what do we have here? Businesses unlikely to be penalised for failing to enforce vaccination rules. Who here knows who this guy is? Another walking disgrace, Brad Hazzard from New South Wales. Supposedly he's the health minister or something. I don't know. He doesn't look very healthy to me.
Need to get vaccinated? Well, yes, you do. Are you kidding yourself if you think you don't need to get vaccinated?
It's not very loud, is it?
Fully vaccinated people will get new freedoms in 2 weeks.
Fully vaccinated people can get new freedoms in 2 weeks. How about this? How about we leave it up to the people to determine what freedoms they want to have, and we get the government out of the business of granting freedoms? Who here thinks that would be a good idea? The government love to try and make themselves seem important. They love to be looked at as the giver of life, the provider of freedom, whereas we don't actually need them. We can do a better job ourselves. In my opinion, the government can't be trusted with our freedom. They can't be trusted to run and operate a police force. They can't be trusted to control the monopoly on use of lethal force. I mean, look at these people. Just look at the bureaucracies. They have to be filled with perhaps the most talentless losers in our country, people that would never have a chance of making it in the private sector. And what are you left with at the end of the day? You're left with people like Brad Hazzard, Brett Sutton. You're left with police chief commissioners who are political appointments. It's just an absolute disgrace. Anyway, moving along here. Now, here is a legend that works in our parliament. George Christensen stands by comments calling Melbourne police officers thugs. Well, good on you, George. Thank you for having a backbone, and thank you for speaking up for the people. When we see innocent protesters smashed to the ground, elderly women assaulted, people shot in the back as they're running away by members of the critical incident response team, I feel that the word thug is a fitting word and a word that George should not back down from using. So George Christensen, good on you. He said here, quote, thugs should be arrested, referring to the officers. Well, they should be arrested, but unfortunately it's very hard to make a citizen's arrest, and it's something that I don't recommend that people do. And unfortunately, as demonstrated in just the past few days, you can have footage, clear as day on camera, of a police officer smashing an unsuspecting person into the ground, putting him on handcuffs, knocking him out, and he gets suspended from work. He doesn't even get arrested and charged. Just an absolute disgrace. And that brings us to the end of this segment, Other Bits and Pieces. So we're just about at the end of the show here. If there's one thing you do today, ladies and gentlemen, jump on MCJ Report, and in the top right-hand corner, you see Join Our Newsletter. Sign up for our free newsletter. I send an email after every show. The great thing about the newsletter is that if I get canned from social media, we will not lose touch, and I will be able to contact you and send you all information that you need to know about MCJ Report and other things that may be of interest. Also, if you'd like to contribute to the show, you can go ahead and click on the donate button. That's right, and you can pledge a financial contribution to MCJ Report and play a role in standing alongside independent media. That's right, we are independent, okay? We don't have big corporations sponsoring MCJ Report. It's all up to you how far you want this show to go. So that's mcjreport.com/donate. There's definitely ways I want to improve the show. We must redevelop the website. We need to develop an app, and we'd love to upgrade our studio. So there's just a few things that I'm working on, just so you know that your money won't be going in vain. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna test something out. Check this out. This is a little plugin. I haven't used it before, so I figure that we can do a bit of Q&A. And I've got this little widget thing on the screen of people making comments in real time. So you can read the comments there on the screen, and it tells you where they're made from, because we've got YouTube Live, but unfortunately comments from Rumble will not appear here. So you'll see comments from Facebook and comments from Rumble. So I'm happy to stick around for a bit. And if anyone has any questions that you'd like to ask, then go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will do my best to answer a few questions. Tinsel, all right, here's the first question I have for you. Do you like seeing this chat feature on the screen? We haven't used it on MCJ Report before. I think the correct term is widget. I could be wrong. But go ahead. Murray says Biohazard is past it. Sack is sorry. Yeah, I'm not going to say that, but I agree with you 100%. Jessica says that it looks good. Rebecca says, tell us what we need to do as individuals. All right, well, the first thing you can do is hold the line. Hold the line, and everything's a process. The legal action is a process. I can tell you that there are tremendous plans that are in the works right now in relation to the launching of new jobs networks that do not discriminate between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Businesses, say through the business directory on the Reignite Democracy website, that will not discriminate against people or impose conditions of entry like vaccine proof and things like that. And also in the works is a homeschooling network. Now, I have several of my supporters are pulling their children out of schools right now because they're concerned about the prospect of mandatory COVID-19 jabs in schools, and the prospect of their child being designated a, quote, mature minor, and their rights being completely trampled over. So, yeah, homeschool network is in the works as well, and those are three things that I'm particularly excited about. All right. Okay, so who's got the next question? Go ahead and ask. Dave says, was the cop suspended on full pay? That's a good question. I don't have the answer. Let me just, I'm having a quick look back through the article. Let's see, pay. I don't think it mentions anything about pay, so not too sure. Sorry, I don't think I can answer that question. Mark says, are they still protesting at everyday protest? No. No, I thought it was going to be every day as per the chants of the crowd, but unfortunately that didn't happen. All right. Russell says you can protest in regional Victoria. I don't know. I haven't checked what the thing is. Oh, yeah, all I can really call it is a thing at this stage. Yeah, Amanda, the legal proceedings, it all takes time. It all takes time, but there's a lot in the works, and we're going to be covering it for sure. Joy says, do I know about the guy that was trampled and run over by police? I think you're talking about the guy that was hit by a police vehicle and then had his head stomped on by a police officer. You're talking about that guy? No, I actually don't know. But part of what I want to do on MCJ Report is give a voice to the voiceless. So if anybody knows him, and if you'd like to come on the show to tell his story, like how Robin told her story, MCJ Report at protonmail.com, and he's welcome to come on. Yeah, Peter says, what's happening with the Supreme Court against Brett Sutton? I'm waiting on an update from Jonathan Andrews from Bozen K Lawyers. So as soon as I receive this update, I'll be relaying that to you and seeking to have Jonathan back on the show as soon as possible. All right, just reading down here. Darren says, yeah, the mature minor thing, yeah, it's very concerning, isn't it? Very, very concerning. Catherine says, more info on the homeschooling network. Yes, I'm coordinating with people who are working on it. So as soon as I know more, I will disclose it to you. And there should be a proper infrastructure in place for parents who are interested. Debbie says, is it you said, is it dangerous to be around people who have been vaccinated? No, I wouldn't think so. I don't see how it possibly could be. Kathy says, why are MPs exempt from the jab? Well, that's a good question. When rolling out jab mandates, the government tends to use the excuse of, well, people in the construction industry have regular contact with other people, or people in the health industry have regular contact. Well, aren't members of parliament meant to have regular contact with people? They're supposed to liaise with people from the community, yet we don't see any mandates for the politicians. I wonder why that is. Just having a read down. Any news on construction workers? No, I mean, they're currently suspended from work. So will they be returning to protest once the suspension on work is over? Or will they not be? Or will they be going on strike? I'm really not too sure. There was a silent protest on Monday by healthcare workers, and we saw public order response sent down to intimidate them. It was absolutely atrocious. I've actually been in contact with somebody who has claimed that he was in Victoria Police for 30 years and is trained in public order response and has quit essentially out of disgust for what is going on in the police force. So I'm making some further inquiries, and maybe, just maybe, if it comes good, and if he is who he says he is, we'll have him on the show. I didn't know that, Brian. Luke, I haven't heard of that particular group. Brendan says, when are they going to prove the virus exists? Okay, so my view is that SARS coronavirus 2 absolutely exists. The isolate has been published by several governments around the world, so you can go ahead and look at the genetic sequence of SARS coronavirus 2. It's available online. So I don't share in the view that the virus doesn't exist. My view is that it clearly does exist, but none of the measures undertaken by the government are proportionate or reasonable based on the alleged tremendous threat of the virus. So that's my position. Alan says, how do you join my newsletter? It's mcjreport.com/join. The link is in the description. Thank you. Just having a read down. Just reading down the comments. Just reading. There's a lot here. No worries, Rebecca. It's my pleasure. It's definitely my pleasure to do this and provide this service. MCJ Report service. Let's see. Thank you, Sonia. I appreciate that. Just reading down. Well, that's right, Gail. So I'm going to do a segment on a couple of terms. There's a couple of terms that we've covered it on MCJ Report, but I want to get back to it. So the first term I want to cover is a term referred to as, quote, confirmed COVID-19 case. All right. So what the mainstream media has done, very deceptive and in a manipulative manner, is they've equated the term COVID-19 case with infection. Okay, so they've conflated the two. Okay, so we're going to go through that on MCJ Report tomorrow. We're going to look at the actual World Health Organization classification of COVID-19 case, and then I'm going to ask you the question at home whether or not the term COVID-19 case, as espoused by the media, is equal to infection, or if it's equal to potentially nothing. So we'll be talking about that on the show tomorrow night. And also, we're going to look at the term COVID-19 death. All right. These are perhaps the two most important terms that I think need to be truly understood. There's three things in my opinion, that if people understood and actually turned off their television, I believe the world would be a better place. Okay. 1, what constitutes a confirmed COVID-19 case? 2, what constitutes a COVID-19 death? And 3, what is the approximate infection fatality rate of the Delta strain? If everybody was to understand these 3 key points, I honestly believe that we would be in such a better position right now. And now these 3 key points are never challenged by the mainstream media. But tomorrow on the MCJ Report, we're going to attack those key 3 points. Okay, you don't have to argue the science of a vaccine. If you noticed on the show, we never argue the science. Okay, because from my perspective, it's not about the science. It's not about whether the vaccine is safe or not safe, or effective or not effective, etc. It's all about personal choice and standing against coercion. Coercion is not consent, and informed consent is just a basic right for anybody living in a civilized society. Okay, so we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And if you stick to those 3 points when arguing with your COVID enthusiast friends and family, believe me, you're gonna do well in the conversation. All right, just having a read through the comments. All right. Well, I think that's just about it. I'd like to thank everyone that tuned in. I can see people on Rumble right now. Thank you so much. I can see, you've been making comments. Also, to everyone watching on Facebook and YouTube, we're on 3 platforms. I'd like to thank everybody for watching the show. Make sure that you go ahead and sign up to the newsletter, mcjreport.com/join. I really appreciate each and every one of you being here tonight. And MCJ Report will return tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow, we're going to rip apart the Therapeutic Goods Administration COVID-19 Vaccination Weekly Safety Report. And we're going to take a further look at those 2 key metrics, which is what constitutes a COVID-19 case and what constitutes a COVID-19 death. All right, so happy days, and I will speak to you soon.